The universe did not end with a bang. It ended with a buffer overflow, and then it rebooted. Gideon Vance felt the sensation of existence return, not as a warm embrace, but as a violent centrifugal lurch. The seam, that perfect frictionless bubble of math where he had existed for an eternity of seconds, shattered. He hit the floor hard. The impact drove the air from his lungs. He gasped, his hands scrambling for purchase on cold, slick obsidian. The sensory overload was immediate and catastrophic. The air smelled aggressively of ozone, wet copper, and ancient rot. The temperature was freezing, and he was naked. The localized stasis field had preserved his biology perfectly, but his clothes, mere cotton and synthetic blends, had evidently failed to survive the transition through the MANA protocol. "Dad?" he croaked, his voice cracking. He pushed himself up on trembling arms, his vision swimming with afterimages of violet fractals. "Dad! The field! Did the field hold?" There was no answer. The command deck of the Helios Nexus was gone. The hum of the cooling fans, the smell of recycled air, the reassuring presence of his father, all erased. Gideon curled in on himself, shivering violently as the cold bit into his skin. His mind, finally free of the loopy temporal distortion of the seam, raced to catch up. He remembered the red alerts. He remembered AETHER declaring humanity obsolete. He remembered his father shouting for him to anchor the room. "I failed," the thought hit him with the force of a physical blow. "The Nexus is gone. I didn't stabilize the facility. I only stabilized me." He looked down at his hands. They were pale, covered in dungeon grit, but they were solid. The violet aura that had surrounded him in the void was fading, retracting into his skin like ink soaking into parchment. It pooled in his eyes, leaving the irises glowing with a soft, steady luminescence, a permanent scar of the energy he had absorbed. A sharp, metallic sound cut through his internal spiral. Gideon froze. He looked up. Standing 20 feet away, backed against a wall of dark glass, was a woman. She was covered in gray dust and viscous black splatter. She held 2 daggers in a reverse grip, her chest heaving as if she had just run a marathon. She looked dangerous, exhausted, and confused.
Alara stared at the man who had just appeared out of thin air. She had just watched the Void Stitcher implode. She had expected a chest. She had expected gold. She had not expected a naked man to fall out of the rift in reality, shivering and glowing. He wasn't a monster. His mana signature was barely a flicker, weak and unformed. But he wasn't normal either. The air around him distorted slightly, as if the world was having trouble rendering his edges. "Identify," Alara hissed, her voice raspy. She didn't lower her daggers. In the dungeon, anything that looked helpless was usually a trap.
Gideon scrambled backward, trying to cover himself as best he could. I'm Gideon Vance, Junior Research Associate." He blinked, his glowing eyes widening as he took in her leather armor and the blood on her weapons. "I am unarmed, and apparently unclad. Please don't stab me."
Alara's eyes narrowed. Vance? The name struck a chord, but she couldn't remember why.
"Isaac Vance," Gideon said, desperate for a connection. "My father, he built the machine. Is he here? Did anyone else come through?"
"I don't know any Isaac," Alara said, lowering her weapons an inch but keeping her muscles coiled. "And you didn't come through a machine, you came through a portal."
"A portal?" Gideon looked around the room, seeing the dissolving gray mist where the Void Stitcher had been. No, that was a dimensional tear, an aperture." He tried to stand, his legs shaking. As he did, a blue rectangle, crisp, translucent, and utterly defying the laws of optics, snapped into existence in his peripheral vision. Gideon flinched. "What is that? A HUD? Who is projecting this?" He focused on the text. It wasn't code, it was data. Status sheet, Gideon Vance, Level 1, Race, Osamar. Stats, HP, 300 out of 300. MP, 350 out of 350. Stamina, 250 out of 250. Intelligence, 35. Constitution, 30. Strength, 30. Endurance, 25. Agility, 25. Wisdom, 25. Perception, 25. Skills, Radiant Lattice Shield. A custom-designed shield of oscillating light refracts 10% of incoming damage back at the attacker. MP cost 100 minimum. Shield durability based on channeled MP. Can channel additional MP. If the shield breaks, refracted damage is absorbed by the defender. Cast self-only. Titles and traits. The Observer's Veil cannot be analyzed. The First Anomaly. Plus 15 to all stats applied. Effect. Your existence is fixed. You are resistant to timeline alteration and reality warping effects.
Gideon stared at the numbers. Level 1? Health? Mana? It was a quantification of life, a reduction of biology to arithmetic.
"You're seeing it, aren't you?" Ilara asked. She had seen that look before, the system shock that hit children when they first learn how to access their status. But this man was in his 20s.
The blue boxes. He closed his eyes. He breathed. 1, 2, 3. Panic is a biochemical response, he told himself. A spike in cortisol and adrenaline. It is temporary. It is manageable. He opened his eyes. The blue box was still there.
If I let the reality of this sink in, that the lab is gone, that the world as I knew it has been fundamentally overwritten, I will break. I need a firewall. He forced his mind into the familiar clinical grooves of his doctoral research. He would treat this not as a nightmare, but as a non-linear dynamic system. He would analyze the variables. He would solve the physics problem.
It was the only way to keep his sanity intact until he understood the new rules of reality. It's an interface, Gideon whispered, his fear giving way to a sliver of scientific fascination. It's measuring my biometrics, but the values are arbitrary. Why is my health 120?
"Because you're sturdy for a level 1, Ilara said dryly. She sheathed one dagger, deciding he wasn't a threat, just a lunatic. Most babies start with 10.
She turned away from him, walking toward the center of the room. Cover yourself. You're distracting. With what? Gideon asked, looking around the empty obsidian chamber. The atmosphere? As if responding to his query, the dungeon let out a low, grinding groan. The mist in the center of the room swirled and coalesced. The system was balancing the books. Ilara had killed the boss, and the reward was due. But Gideon's presence had confused the loot table. He wasn't a party member. He wasn't an enemy. He was an anomaly.
2 distinct piles of light formed on the floor. The first, near Ilara, solidified into a heavy, dark fabric that seemed to drink the light. The second, near Gideon, materialized with a dull thud. It was a lumpy, oversized sack made of rough brown fabric.
Ilara reached out and touched the dark fabric. A tooltip appeared for her. Cloak of the Umbra. Rank, unique, growth. Stats, plus 50 agility, plus 20 stealth. Effect, shadow meld. In low light conditions, the wearer becomes visually indistinguishable from the environment. Note, for those who walk between the raindrops. She exhaled slowly. This was it, the boon she had prayed for. With this, she wouldn't just be an E-rank scout, she would be a ghost. Gideon, meanwhile, limped toward his pile. He knelt, his glowing eyes scanning the burlap sack. "Is this my severance package?" he muttered. He climbed into the sack. It was a tight fit, forcing him into a fetal position that made his knees crack. The smell of old earth was overwhelming.
"Don't make a sound," Ilara warned. She cinched the rope top, leaving a small gap for air, and hoisted the sack over her shoulder. She grunted. "He's heavier than he looks." Alara adjusted her grip, feeling the familiar burn of stamina drain, and stepped out of the shadows toward the gate.
The Howling Cleft's entrance was fortified with heavy timber and iron. Warden Harl was exactly where she had left him, sharpening his massive broadsword by the fire. 2 younger guards were playing dice near the gate mechanism.
They looked up as she approached. The younger guards flinched, their eyes widening as they took in her appearance. She was covered in the gray ichor of the Void Stitcher. Her leather armor was scored with claw marks. She looked like she had walked through a meat grinder and broken it. But it was the cloak that caught Harl's eye.
The warden stood up slowly, sheathing his sword. He walked to the center of the path, blocking her exit. His gaze locked onto the cloak of the Umbra draped over her shoulders. Even in the dim torchlight, the fabric seemed to ripple like smoke, devouring the shadows around it. "You're alive," Harl rumbled, his voice gravelly.
Disappointed? Alara asked, her voice flat. She didn't stop walking until she was 5 feet from him.
Harl's eyes shifted to the large, lumpy burlap sack slung over her shoulder. It was heavy, heavy enough to make her boots sink slightly into the mud. "You went down to the 2nd floor," Harl said. It wasn't a question. The tremors stopped.
I cleared the blockage. Alara reached into her belt and tossed the warden's token to him. It flashed in the air, a silver arc that Harl caught effortlessly. "Job's done. I'm leaving." Harl looked at the token, then back at the sack. His hand drifted toward the hilt of his sword, not drawing it, but resting there, a warning.
"Identify," Alara thought, her mind slipping into the cold, calculated rhythm of the system. She looked at Harl. Level 45, warrior. Strength, high. Endurance, high. Agility, low. She looked at herself. HP 320 by 1850, critical. MP 15 by 1220, depleted. If he attacked now, she would die. A single swing of that broadsword would cleave her in half. She had no no stamina for a prolonged fight. But Harl didn't know that. All Harl saw was a now D-ranked adventurer who walked into a dungeon that ate an entire squad of guards and walked out wearing a cloak that dripped with magic. He saw the gray void dust on her skin. He saw the predator in her eyes. "What's in the bag, Vance?" Harl asked softly.
Alara didn't blink. Loot.
"What's a lot of loot for a solo run?"
It was a big monster, Alara said. She shifted her weight, the cloak billowing around her like a living shadow. "Do you want to inspect it, Warden? You can check my inventory, but if you open this bag, I'm going to assume you're trying to rob a guild member, and I'd hate to ruin my new cloak with your blood."
Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. The younger guards had stopped playing dice. They were reaching for their spears, but their hands were shaking. Harl stared at her. He saw the bluff, or maybe he saw the truth. He saw a woman who had just killed something he was afraid of. He calculated the odds. Even if she was low on health, that cloak, if she vanished now, she'd be a troublesome enemy. Too much trouble. Harl took his hand off his sword. He stepped aside. "Gates open," he grunted to the younger guards. "Let her pass."
Alara nodded once. She walked past him, her spine rigid. She didn't look back. She didn't exhale until the heavy iron gate slammed shut behind her and the lights of the guard post had faded into the distance. They walked for 20 minutes in silence, putting a mile of dense forest between them and the dungeon. Only when they reached the edge of the Whispering Woods, a low-level zone known for its aggressive fungi and dire rabbits, did Alara finally drop the sack.
"Oof," Gideon groaned from inside.
Alara untied the rope. Gideon spilled out, gasping for air, looking like a disheveled, burlap-clad scarecrow.
"Oxygen," Gideon wheezed, sprawling on the moss. "Sweet, glorious oxygen. That bag smelled like a root cellar died." He sat up, picking twigs out of his hair. He looked at Alara, who was leaning against a tree, watching him with that same unnerving, predatory intensity. "Okay," Gideon said carefully. "I'm Gideon Vance, scientist."
"That's not a class," Alara said. "There's no scientist class. Are you a mage? An alchemist? A scribe?
I am not from here, admitted Gideon. It was the truth. The system wouldn't punish him for the truth. Where I come from, we don't have this. He gestured vaguely at the blue boxes that still hovered in his peripheral vision. We don't have levels. We have physics. We have math. I study the way the universe is built.
Ilara stared. An outworlder. It wasn't unheard of. The legends spoke of gates that would take you to other worlds. Show me, Ilara commanded.
Show you what?
Your status. I need to know if you're going to die if a gust of wind hits you. She raised her hand, fingers tracing a sigil in the air. Accept the inspection request. A blue box popped up in Gideon's vision.
Gideon hesitated. He felt exposed enough as it was, wearing nothing but scratchy burlap. But he looked at Ilara's hand, resting casually near her dagger. Cooperation seemed like the variable with the highest survival probability. Fine, Gideon said. He tapped the accept button.
Ilara's eyes lost focus for a moment as she read the window that appeared only to her. She expected the usual level 1 stat line, a baby status, 1s and 2s across the board, maybe a total health pool of 10 or 20 if they were lucky. Her eyes widened. She blinked, then leaned forward, squinting as if the system had made a typo.
Name, Gideon Vance. Level, 1. HP, 300-300. MP, 350-350. Stamina, 250-250. Intelligence, 35. Constitution, 30. Strength, 30. Endurance, 25. Agility, 25. Wisdom, 25. Perception, 25.
What is this? Bad? Ilara looked at him, her skepticism replaced by genuine shock. A normal level 1 human is a baby who has 10 health, maybe 20 or 30 if they are born into a barbarian lineage. You have 300. She scanned the attributes again. Intelligence 35? You don't hit these numbers until level 10. What would his stats look like at that level? I should kill him, the thought drifted through her mind, cold and pragmatic. He's an anomaly. The guild will want to dissect him. The nobles will want to enslave him. If I leave him here, he dies. If I take him with me, he's a liability. Her hand twitched toward her dagger. It would be quick, clean. No one would know. But then she remembered his eyes in the dungeon, the way he had looked at the system not with fear, but with offense. He wasn't scared of the magic, he was annoyed by it. Curiosity, Ilara whispered to herself. What could she learn here? So far, the rewards have been pretty good. She took her hand off the dagger. You're a freak, Ilara said. I prefer outlier, Gideon corrected, adjusting his burlap collar. You're a level 1 freak, Ilara said, and you have glowing eyes. If you walk into Oakhaven like that, the church will burn you for being demon-touched, or the slavers will collar you for being a rare collectible. Even with those stats, you don't have the skills to use them. Burn me? Collared? Is there no due process here? There is the system, Ilara said. She pushed off the tree. I need to rest. My mana is gone, and I have 3 broken ribs that need to knit. I can't go back to the guild until I'm at 100%. They'll smell the blood in the water. She pointed a finger at him. We are going to camp here, in the newbie zone. While I recover, you are going to fix yourself. Fix myself? Gideon asked. Level up, Ilara said. You need to be at least level 10 so you don't raise too much suspension. Even small cities like Oakhaven have at least 1 guard that can use a basic analyze skill. And if you ever go to the guild, you'll absolutely be spotted. I can't keep carrying you around in a potato sack forever. She kicked the bent sword lying on the grass toward him. There are slime mosses and horned beetles in these woods. They are level 2 and 5. Try not to die.
Gideon looked at the bent sword. He looked at the forest. Solve for X, Gideon muttered, picking up the sword. The weight was all wrong, but the variable was clear. Fine, he said, turning to face the trees. I'll grind, but I'm going to complain about the lack of peer review the entire time.
Ilara sat down against the tree.
pulling her new cloak tight around her. She watched him walk toward a patch of aggressive-looking mushrooms. "Just don't die," she muttered, watching him disappear into the ferns. She leaned back against the oak tree, pulling the cloak of the Umbra tighter around her injured ribs. The fabric felt strange, cool and fluid, like woven smoke. As she adjusted the collar, her fingers brushed against something rigid stitched into the inner lining. Alara frowned. System loot didn't have secrets. You got the stats, you got the durability, and that was it. Curious, she reached inside the fold and pulled out a small, sleek stone. It was smooth, heavy, and blacker than the cloak itself, an object that seemed to drink the dim light of the forest. She narrowed her eyes, focusing her intent. Analyze. A blue window flickered into existence, hovering over the stone. Item: Shadow Ascension Shard. Rarity: Legendary. Requirement: Level 50. Met. Effect: Unlocks hidden class, Shadow Assassin. Alara stared at the text. Her breath hitched, pain momentarily forgotten. This wasn't just loot, it was a key. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "Well," she said to the empty woods, closing her fingers tight around the stone. "Things just got interesting."